Hello and welcome to the Powertec Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Richards. Today, I have a really special guest. She is an 8-time IFBB figure Olympian, host of Olympia TV, and just all-around badass entrepreneur. Please welcome to the show, Wendy Fortino. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Absolutely. I know you're busy on your social media. I see you around doing everything. So let's start off with that. What is going on in Wendy's world? Where are you at the moment? What's happening next? Talk to me.
Whew, my gosh. Well, what is going on with me? Well, I have a lot of projects that I'm working on at the moment. It's funny because there's a lot of projects that they're en route, and so it's hard to really talk about them exactly. But I will say that I have some old school TV shows that I'm working to resurrect with some old school icons.
Oh, I knew it.
What? You did?
From your social media, I won't jump the gun, but I got that vibe when I saw you with a certain person.
Yeah.
And even though that was before I came to America, I was very much aware of it. I was just talking about that to my friend the other day. So really excited for that project, if it's what I think it is.
See, this is good. We're giving people cliffhangers. We're putting people on the edge of their seats. This is good. But I also I'm kind of in this weird transitional place right now because I have competed in the Olympia 8 times. I am not totally sure where I'm at in my journey. I think I'm closer to the end than I am to the beginning. But I do know that I'm going to be at the Olympia representing muscle and fitness. I'm going to be running the podcast station and doing interviews for Muscle and Fitness and being a spokesperson for them at the Olympia. So I think that's what I'm going to focus on this year at the Olympia. But I don't know. It's just such a weird place to be, you know? I mean, you know how it is. Like you compete for so long. It's your life. It's your identity. And then, you know, I'm kind of in transition with my career. So like one foot in, one foot out, you can't really focus on any one thing when you're that way. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's kind of maybe we can have a little, psychology moment here. I don't know.
I can definitely relate to that. I think as lifelong fitness enthusiasts, bodybuilders, if you like, in the general term of building our bodies and keeping them, optimal and functional in that sense, we never really leave that world. So even though we may step away from the stage, we're still very much in that domain, whether it's connecting with other people. I mean, the podcasts that you do and these brands, Olympia, Muscle and Fitness, who hold very close to my heart. Got to cover with them, so I'll be forever grateful for them. But it keeps us connected with the audience. It keeps us paying that information forwards, which I think is key. When we first got into weight training, how did we learn about what we know today? We had to go through the steps. We were asking people, which leads me on. Who are some of the big inspirations to you when you were kind of just getting into this, into the world of competing?
Okay, this is kind of a funny story. So you're like buckling up. I can see you're like.
I'm ready. I got my coffee. Let's go. Let's get into it.
All right. So as you know, in 2008, I was actually a professional track athlete. I was training for the Olympic trials, and that was my whole world. That was my life. And it was like a month and a half before the Olympic trials, and I got a stress fracture in my foot. I was just like depressed. I was bummed out and everything like that. And I had no idea what to do. And so Matt, my husband, he was competing in bodybuilding. I had no idea about that world. And everyone he was training with was like,
were you married to him at the time? Because you say my husband, but I had no idea. So
no,
was he doing
we had been dating
behind the back bodybuilding that you didn't know about it? You're like,
I didn't know about it. Well, we had only been dating for like a month, so I didn't really know much about his world. Like I was a track athlete. He was a bodybuilder. I didn't really know much about that world.
Sure.
And so when all of his friends were like, "Oh, you gotta like have her compete in a show," and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I didn't really know much about it, but I just didn't think it was something that I wanted to do. But there was this DVD, it was called The Secret of Beauty, and it was like Monica Brandt's Secret of Beauty. And he brought that home and he showed me, and I was like, that looks kind of cool. I could see doing that. This is kind of a fun, like, full circle moment here, because I watched that and actually taught myself how to pose, because there wasn't like a bunch of things on YouTube. There weren't posing coaches. Like in 2008, nobody was really, I mean, hardly anybody really knew. People say, what division did you start? And I'm like, the only division I could, fitness and figure. I mean, unless I wanted to do bodybuilding. And so I taught myself how to pose with that DVD, and I competed. I won the overall my first show, and then I kind of never really looked back. But it's funny, because as I continue to compete and evolve in the sport, I eventually, I think it was like 2016, I launched a virtual posing product called Polished Presentation, and it was doing really well. I mean, I sold thousands of copies, and I remember watching the sales of it come in, and I remember seeing Monica Brandt. And I was like, whoa. I was like, what? I was like, that's kind of crazy. So Monica, we had never really linked up, but she bought my product. And yeah, isn't that kind of crazy? So I reached out to her and I'm like, hey, and we went back and forth, and we instantly connected and clicked, and we were sort of back and forth in touch. And then she ended up launching a podcast in like 2020, I think it was. And I co-hosted with her on her Monica Brandt podcast. So it was kind of funny, because we've had that connection ever since I first started competing. But she was kind of like my first inspiration, because of that whole, that's how I kind of got introduced to what the hell I was going to do,
It's funny you mentioned Monica. I actually had the pleasure of following Monica, joining rather, not following. Sounds like I was stalking her. Joining Monica, I believe around 2008, when she was, I want to say, returning back to stage. She had done a competition in, I think, Florida, somewhere on the East Coast. And I had flown out, met her there. I was working for a TV show back in England on Sky TV, and was kind of following these great legends around, and kind of going into their home and interviewing them, and going to the gym and filming them, and just really sort of the preemptive social media for what it is today. But it was kind of like a MTV Cribs for the legends of bodybuilding and figure. And I just remember she's so humble, such a nice, warm person. And it was just, it was a highlight of my year, even though I was competing around that time. But to be able to connect with people of that caliber, and still to this day doing what she's doing, it just goes to show the lifespan, longevity that health and fitness has outside of the sport, but just in general, maintaining that level of, well-being overall.
Yeah, I know. We were talking about how we were going to go into longevity, and I think that's my main thing. And I was going to say this, but I mean, you look better than you looked when you were even competing. I don't know what you've got going on over there, but it's working for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. You know what I think that comes down to? And I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit deeper later on throughout the show. People often talk about cortisol, the stress hormone. And I think when we compete, we as competitors place probably more stress on ourselves than anyone else. I mean, I've never had a coach or nutritionist. I've always wanted to do things my way, for better or for worse, perhaps. But I know I would always go into a show with these, we want to win. We don't go into a show thinking, well, 5th or 6th might be okay. We go in there wanting to place as high as we can. So we put a lot of stress on ourselves. And when I stepped away from competing, and I didn't know it was my last show, it just happened to be the last show that I had done at that time period, which was 2014, I felt this relief, this weight lifted off my shoulders. And I almost didn't know what to do with my time. I mean, I'm sure when you were in the midst of all your competing, we're very structured with what we do. When we're training, when we're eating, we're so regimented in that routine that when we no longer have the pressure of I mean, I still trained like that for months after, but then it was like, I can go and eat something. I don't have to weigh my food out. And I think that, that relief allowed me just to really enjoy training without needing to track all of my nutrition. So I'm just having fun with it. But at the same time, I'm still dialed in. I'm still focused and pushed.
Right.
And who knows, maybe there'll be a stage return soon, but without any pressure of needing to, beat certain people or place higher than I may have done last year. So I think that comes into a lot.
I'm of the opinion that if you have to go to extremes to get your physique to the place it needs to be on stage, like extremes where, your body is just fighting itself so hard that it's time for a crazy rebound, or maybe it's so far away from where your, genetic, potential wants to be. I think that's not so good. And as an example, I always say this: I'm 5 feet tall. I'm never going to be a professional basketball player. Okay. It's like, that's something that if I wanted that so bad, I fought my genetics so hard, I would never, I wouldn't necessarily, I would be fighting against something that is just not there. Right. I've always been lean my whole life. I've always been an athlete. I've never had to go to extremes. It's not difficult, although I do work my ass off. I train hard, and I pass thresholds. But the thing is, I've never had to go to crazy extremes. And I think that there are a lot of people, unfortunately, in the industry who fight so hard what their body wants to do and put their body under so much stress and do things, take things, whatever ergogenic aids you may want to, mention. But that is, a lot on the body that is so abnormal and not primed for long-term success, that I think that that's where people are kind of missing the mark. Right. And that's, and I guess, long story short, I don't think that competing at a high level is for everybody, but everybody has something that they can be successful at. It may not be the bodybuilding stage, but fitness is for everybody. Everybody can get their body to the best shape of their life. But to get to that extreme, crazy stage look, that's not something that I've ever had to do anything extreme to get to. That's just where my body just has been able to do that without having to do anything crazy or stressful for myself. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's unfortunately what is going on in a lot of cases is, people are fighting their bodies so much, and that, you see it in shortened careers. I mean, I've been at it for 16 years now, and I'm talking about maybe being done, but 16 years, you know what I mean? You competed for, I don't know how long, but you competed for a long time too.
10-year stretch, but
that's
still
a long
kind
time.
of still maintain that sort of lifestyle. And that's a long time to place that amount of stress on the body. I mean,
it's still stress on the body for sure.
I assume you were sort of strategically placing your competitions sort of middle part of the year and then towards the end, obviously when the Olympia happens around September time.
Yeah.
Was that a strategy with your coach or with the team around you, that you would focus on peaking your physique for a particular competition and then allowing time, whether it's complete rest, time away from the gym, to recover? How did that come into the whole approach to you competing?
Well, so I turned pro in 2011. I won the overall at the USA in 2011. And after I turned pro, I was competing multiple times a year. And my goal was either to get points or to win a show to qualify for the Olympia. And I mean, I was doing really, really well, but I wasn't winning shows yet at the beginning of my career. And then once I got to, it was like 2017 is when I won my first pro show. And ever since then, it's like I would win, most of the time, I'd win earlier on the season, and then I would just take the rest of the season to prepare for the Olympia. Because once you win a show and you qualify, it's up to you. I mean, you're qualified for the Olympia. You can either continue to compete. But before that, I mean, I was like on the road, right? Like road warrior, trying to like get myself to the Olympia. So I think that was kind of my strategy is, try to qualify as early as possible and then be able to have plenty of time to just prepare as long as possible for the Olympia. But last year, something a little bit different happened to me because the O Dynasty in March, the show that I won, that I went into that show going, I think this might be my last show of my career. I mean, I was like focusing on my career outside of competing, and I'm like, I think this is going to be it. But I won. And I'm like, well, you can't call yourself 8-time Olympian without being on stage. But that's not the best approach to competing at a high level. You're just kind of like, well, I better step on stage so that I can calm. I think all year long, I was so distracted, and I was not fiercely checked into my preparation. And so when I stepped on the Olympia stage, I was not quite as good as I was when I won the show. And that's actually what made me feel like I didn't want to be done yet. It wasn't like I was already kind of done, and then that wasn't how I wanted to go out. So I trained really hard, and I competed at the beginning of the season. I was a little bit better than I was at the Olympia, which was great, but I still wasn't all the way myself. I competed again, and I was a little bit better than that, but I still wasn't totally put together. So then I'm like, I'm going to compete one more time, give myself one more shot to maybe win and qualify. But then, my career is getting in the way again, and I'm thinking, well, maybe this is my sign. See, I'm all over the place right now. Maybe I'm not the best interview right now because I'm just all over the place.
No, that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. And I picked up on something. You said your career was getting in the way, which I've always found interesting because I found competing as a literal stepping stone to open up more opportunities. And whilst a very select few make it their kind of career goal to do the circuits and compete, and I think perhaps more so now people are aware because of social media and just the availability of information. But unless you're kind of in that top 1 or 2% of competitors, I mean, there's not really that much money in terms of prize money to be able to fund the traveling, the coaching, the training. I mean, the whole lifestyle. I mean, to train and commit to that level, it has to be your job. I mean, working a 9 to 5 and then doing the whole training in the gym is literally 2 jobs back to back. So when you say your career gets in the way, I've always looked at it that your competition career was a grid work to all of these opportunities for a flourishing career in terms of interviewing, networking, podcasting, and all of the other companies and brands that you work with.
It's a double-edged sword because it's a double-edged sword because I think for the past about 5 years I have made the transition mentally into my life, my world, my obsession being all focused on competing. And I was coaching clients and things like that. And then I made a transition. I started focusing on my career in media, sports media. And that became that turn in my brain where, competing has been a vessel for me to have more of a platform and have more relevance and stay relevant as I'm kind of finding my way in this other world of my career. But the double-edged sword is you can't win and you can't be at a high level unless you are obsessively training for the event. So it's like yes and no. I'm definitely, that's why I say, getting in the way of my career getting in the way of it, because yes, 2 things can be true at the same time, which is I'm focusing on my career and I'm trying to compete at this high level. But the double-edged sword is, one, there's a give and take. One takes from the other for sure. And you can't just be floating and be so good and still win when all these other girls are just that's their whole world, right? So no one is that talented. Nobody's that gifted. Nobody's that capable of being like, oh, this is my secondary priority and I'm going to go up on stage against girls that are obsessed with this and I'm just going to kick their butt. You have to be able to find a way, and I hate the word balance because you can't really be successful and be balanced, but you have to find a way to balance that fierceness and the dedication with also the knowledge that this is being used as your platform and your way to stay relevant, because your goal actually is for me is my career, right? So, it's an interesting conundrum.
I want to pick up on that word obsession, because I think that comes into training and the lifestyle a lot. So let me ask you this, Wendy. If there was Wendy, the competitor, as you are now, and Wendy, who never discovered bodybuilding, competing, kind of aiming towards that figure stage, but who liked to go into the gym and lift weights, define to me the difference between obsession and just, training day in, day out, just for the enjoyment, maybe more of a health aspect. What is the difference that obsession makes in terms of building muscle, seeing your physique change, and just, I would say, the mindset that you get from being obsessive to the gym and your nutrition and rest, the full jigsaw, to be able to make the difference of Wendy who doesn't train, or at least at that level, and Wendy the competitor. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It's night and day. Because when I'm obsessed, my phone goes in the locker and I'm 100% checked into my workout. And when I'm 100% checked into my workout, every single rep, every single set, every single piece of that workout is completely locked in. Mentally, I'm thinking about being on that. Like, I will close my eyes while in the middle of my set, and I'm imagining being on that stage, being announced as the winner, and that's like, and it's like so real, and it absolutely changes everything. When I'm mentally locked in, like nothing else is in my world, and that makes all the difference in the way that my results come into play, right? I mean, obviously going to the gym and having a great workout, you're always going to get results. Your body's going to respond when you stimulate it. But getting my body to that next level, the champion level, is absolutely affected and impacted by the way that I check in mentally. And there is that obsessive component that is mental and is way more than physical, right? You could go through the motions and do the exact same workout. Person A and person B, they could have the exact same workout, the exact same level that they're able to exert and everything. But person A is phone in the locker, totally locked in, checked in, mentally, just everything is all about this workout. And person B is going through the motions and making the workout happen. And those two people, just because of mental components alone, they're going to have totally different results at the end of the day. If you compare the two months from now and you see what the difference is, for me, that has always made a huge difference. And that was the difference between me at the show that I won versus me at the Olympia when I was a lesser version of myself,
Absolutely. I love that. The visualization of where we want to go, result driven. We're in the gym training for a specific set of results that if we don't get, we need to change something. And I've always loved that. Not just the biomechanics of training, but it's like we are our own personal experiment. And we go into the gym with a goal and a strategy in whether it's a specific weights routine, a workout, a muscle group that we're working on, an area that we want to develop, and whether it's through coaches or our own information, or to a degree trial and error. We try something, if it doesn't work, we change something until we kind of see the results. But I've always found that so fascinating. The same with nutrition as well.
Oh, yeah.
Is that when we know we're onto something good and we see the changes start to happen, I mean, that I would say is its own biggest motivator, seeing the results from what we're doing. And so when, and I'm sure you get this a lot with the community online, your followers, the fans, people that you meet out and about, the questions that they ask are normally, how can I develop something? How can I build something? How can I change something? Whether it's lose fat, build muscle, everyone wants to get from sort of point A to B.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When it comes to building muscle, which I assume the category for figure is a little bit more built, a little bit more physique orientated than the sort of the more lifestyle, fitness, health and fitness sort of area. Talk me through how one changes and kind of builds their physique. Because it's probably not the same as bodybuilding in the sense that I'm sure you're not doing heavy 5-6 sets of exercises and putting as much food into your body as you can get. So what are some of the key differences between, a top tier bodybuilder and a top tier figure competitor?
Right. Well, bodybuilding is obviously a lot more muscle, but I think we're all artists to a degree. Whenever you want to build muscle, obviously you have to do some sort of progressive overloading. I do compound movements, but I would say that the ancillary movements are underrated when it comes to building and creating a physique. Having really articulate focus on the muscles that you're trying to train is key. And for me, I mean, progressive overloading using intensity principles is way more effective than trying to just continue to add weight. Because, I mean, if you're trying to create something and you're like thinking of your body as a work of art, if I want to specifically, build, if I'm looking at my physique and I'm like, okay, my interior delts are a little bit lacking, and it's not rounding out my shoulders the way that I want to, I'm not going to go and do some heavy shoulder presses and try to like go to 50-pound dumbbells and just be all over the place and not know where I'm connecting. I'm going to go, okay, well, I'm going to get into the cables. I'm going to try to focus and put my connection harder and more intensely into the exact place that I want to go, maybe find the right angle where I'm finding the exact part of my shoulder that I'm trying to build and develop, and just really like isolate, engage it, and focus with as much intensity as possible. And so then that specific part of my body will start to respond, And when you create those really strong connections and you're utilizing intensity principles that are beyond just adding a bunch of weight, you're going to have a lot of control over the way that you're developing your body. Because I think some people do go into bodybuilding thinking it's just about putting muscle all over the frame. And that's when the body can start to look sloppy and very clunky, and it doesn't really flow. And you see physiques. I mean, not every physique is the same. As why that's why I become a champion competitor. I don't have the most muscle, but I know how to create what I'm trying to create. And if you put two physiques next to each other and you have this physique has like a bunch of muscle and this physique has a little bit less muscle, but really good flow and lines, that's really what should be getting rewarded in the world of bodybuilding, right? It's not the biggest, leanest, craziest physique. And the figure division doesn't, you have to face straight on. You don't get to tweak and twerk your body like in bikini or some other divisions. You've got to be straight on. If you have a V taper or an X frame, then you have an X frame. You can't hide from it. You're straight on. Either you have the X frame or you don't. You don't get to tweak or twist or morph anything. And so when you're thinking about how you're creating that, it's really an art project.
I didn't know that. No, that's very detailed. Now I know more than I did before. I was not aware that with figure you can't twist and turn and do all of that. And that's one thing I loved about the bodybuilding routine. The first few shows I did back in England were bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Which sounds crazy to say, but it was, again, picking up on that word artistic. There was this beautiful, I think 90 seconds we had to do our posing routine.
Okay.
And I know you know this person well, Sean Ray. I would study his, I think it was a 1993 posing routine that he had done. I mean, I drew out each 8-bar count with stick figures, how I wanted to pose. I would spend in the coming weeks before a show, there'd be my training, there'd be posing time, and then I would be in the aerobic studio just like 30, 40 minutes after pretty much every workout, going through these motions. And I know Arnold Schwarzenegger, in his early days would actually have a ballet teacher teach him how to gracefully transition from one pose to the next. And that really appealed to me because there was something to show for it more than just what we would do in the gym. And I always liked that when my family would come and watch my earlier shows, that, it's one thing to kind of see the results happen in the gym for ourselves, but you don't really then go home or be out with your friends and just be like, boom, look at this, or, here's my abs, or. So when what I'm saying is when we were on stage, that was our time to kind of present all of our hard work. It was like our art class display where we're like, welcome to the show. Look at what I've done. And I just, that was the highlight for me is being able to show all of the hard work that we've done in the gym and put it all together on the stage.
Oh, yeah.
So, moving on, you talk about traveling a lot through work, through competing.
Mm-hmm.
Training during this time, were you kind of basing your travel on, I need to go where the best gyms are? Or were you getting to the places where you were staying and saying, I need to find a gym? Were there hotel gyms? Were you taking weights or bands with you? How were you able to incorporate such a high intensity, frequency level of training whilst you were traveling and still to this day?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, there was a long period of time when I was traveling to Arizona a lot because that's where the Olympia headquarters is. That's where the studios where we film a lot of our shows. And I got a membership at the gym that was really close to the hotel I was staying in. Even though I was there like 2 weekends out of every month, I still got a membership there so that I have a really good gym that I could go to. But, this may not be the best, but I usually most of the time, if I'm traveling, I'll make do with what the hotel gym has. And the reason why, and I know this maybe like a lot of people, you gotta go to this gym, you gotta go to that gym, or when I'm in Vegas, there's all these gyms and like all these people that I know that I'm gonna run into. That's actually why I don't necessarily want to go to all these gyms because when I travel and I want to work out, sometimes the best thing is when I go to the hotel gym and nobody's there. And I could figure out anything with a set of dumbbells. Sometimes they have like a cable crossover. And I could do just about anything with those tools. And sometimes I just love the isolation of it. I love being in there by myself, nobody around. I think I've shared that with you before. I'm like, look at the gym's all to myself. I love that. And I do that a lot, aside from when I got the membership at the gym when I was traveling to the studios in Arizona. I do typically just stay close to home. I love being by myself. I don't know. Maybe that's
I can relate to that. I was in Germany a couple of months ago for FIBO, and the hotel that we stayed at was literally the closest hotel you could get to FIBO. It was a 50-meter walk to the front entrance. And you might think that the gym there is going to be pretty well equipped. There were like 3 treadmills, dumbbells up to 30 pounds, and like a Swiss ball. There was limited equipment. But what I love about that is you make it work. And, I went in there, and even though I was still training muscle-specific routines, we make it as challenging as it needs to be. So I was, doing like 2 dumbbell, 1-arm shoulder presses while sat on the Swiss ball.
You doubled up the dumbbells. I was just going to ask you if you did that.
Yeah, and then, we start to train. Not everything needs to be about intensity in terms of weight, stress on the muscle. I was, if I couldn't really get to muscle failure doing 30-pound dumbbell presses when I'm used to doing, X amount more. But I would do exercises that would still challenge me. So sort of, dumbbell supported rear delt X flies, which we're focusing on a smaller muscle group through a much kind of limited range of motion. And that was challenging. And I would go to the FIBO event after training my shoulders thinking, man, my shoulders are burnt, they're sore. Which made me think going back into a regular gym when I got back home, I need to switch up my routine more because whilst I'm constantly trying to push the heaviest weights doing the same kind of routines, I also need to, and you mentioned earlier, the ancillary muscles, these, assisting muscles to the larger compound type muscles that often we don't see or we don't think about when we train. We need to give them some love too. And they're often the ones that when we're dialed in, nutrition obviously has a huge part of it because whilst we can develop the muscles, if we've got layers of body fat clouding that conditioning and the separation, we don't look anywhere near as conditioned, dialed in, chiseled. In the world of competition, we hear the word granite a lot. And I always think about sort of the Michelangelo, David statue, the chiseling. And for me, that's what this whole getting stage ready is about. You don't really get stage ready for doing all the big muscle building exercises. That's sort of, off season in terms of you're not focused on how low your body fat level is. You're focused on building and growing the overall frame, your muscle. But then those, whether it's 12 or 16 plus weeks coming into the competition, that's where you start to kind of dial it in a little bit more, add the cardio in, focus on the cables and some body weight movements and all of those, whether it's drop sets, supersets, which you spoke about earlier. So let's get into that. What would be some of the...
Really fast, I have a question for you.
Sure, okay.
So when you travel, you don't bring your Powertec with you? What's up with that?
I do not bring my Powertec machines with me. That would be quite a
airplane? You throw it on the deck?
Getting charged 400 pounds for a carry-on might be a bit too excessive.
Okay. Fair enough.
Saying that, I have taken bands before, the big resistance bands, and made use of them. I know a lot of Backstage. I know there's big full gyms now, but I've always found it amazing when you go to a competition and there's bands. And let me ask you this. Do you have a specific routine backstage that you would always do before going on stage? Like a warm-up routine?
I don't know if it's a specific routine, but I definitely have specific things that I typically do because I normally want to get my back muscles like full of blood and my shoulders full of blood and my biceps, and those muscles, like when those fill out, everything kind of flows from there, right? I try to stay away from doing anything with my legs because I don't want them to get watery or, I want them to be fleshed out. So I try to stay away from, I've seen girls backstage doing like squats and all kinds of weird things with their legs.
Yeah.
But, I want to keep them looking like as dialed in as possible. And I don't want cortisol levels to go up. I don't want water to start flooding in. So I usually focus on like upper body stuff. I don't have a specific routine, but I just have a goal, a goal of like, okay, that looks pumped enough. We're good.
Yeah. I think the pump up time backstage was probably when I think most of us feel we look our best. I wish we had a very specific time where we weren't out on stage just waiting, and there's always a delay, or quite often a delay between when we're told to go on stage. So we start, putting in like the honey or the dark chocolate or whatever we might do to help bring that vascularity out and start pumping up and getting blood into the muscles, which gives us a much more hardened, ready look for stage, obviously depending on which category we might be doing. But I always wish that we kind of got called out one by one, and you can just pump up and they call you out and you go out, you present yourself and you come back, which wouldn't be anywhere near as good for probably the judges and the audience there as well. But in terms of us looking our best, I've always felt those final minutes backstage, you're like, man, I'm spot on. I'm ready. And then there might be a 30-minute, an hour plus wait. And obviously you can't keep pumping up. So you've got to really time it well between starting your kind of pre-stage warm-up routine to when you are on stage and being judged. And even when you're at the back of the stage, you are still being judged. I've seen so many people
on your own show. You gotta get this set up.
Maybe we can talk after, and we'll bring all of our resources together and bring back a certain element of old school, just passion, get them on stage and back to what I don't want to say what it should be all about, but what it should be all about. Focused on. Yeah, but you can just, we're both passionate about, I think, not being on stage, but just the whole scope of what it means to be obsessively in great shape. And with that comes, I think, great health as well. So let's talk about that a little bit more, because often when people see people, weeks out from a competition, is it the healthiest that we are at? No, it's not. I would say we're probably at our healthiest maybe 10 or 12 weeks, just starting that sort of contest prep.
Should be,
because then we've got to start to take our body beyond what is, you use the word balance, which I think is really key. We want a healthy amount of body fat. We don't want to be so low that our body constantly feels that we're in this sort of forced starvation, which means we have to be feeding it a certain amount of food at key intervals throughout the day. Otherwise, we're literally cannibalizing ourselves. Our muscle starts to break down its own muscle tissue for those essential nutrients that it hasn't got either from our diet or it's not able to metabolize from our stored body fat. So, people see, and we're going off on a tangent here. I am. Social media, we often put out, or we see a lot of these sort of, let's just call it unobtainable figures and physiques where people look amazing and those who are not in that domain, have competed, and maybe those who have as well. But we see that and we're influenced by it. And so we think, I want to look like that person. I want to do what they're doing. I see what they're putting out. I'm going to follow it. A lot of smoke and mirror, I think, with that.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of health, let's talk about that. When do you feel you are at your healthiest? Let's talk about training aspect, whether cardiovascular is involved, nutrition, and just lifestyle and mental wellness as well. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. Our mental state, when we're happy, we're more healthy. Would you agree?
I do agree. I think, it's interesting that you said 10 to 12 weeks because I think that's ideal. I think anybody who gets ready for competition absolutely should be at their peak physical condition at like 10 to 12 weeks. And if you're not, you probably aren't in a good position to be preparing for a contest. But people do it all the time, right? I mean, you see it all the time where people have a significant amount of weight to lose or body fat to lose, and they're like, I'm going to do a show, and then they use that and it's never works in the long run because even if somebody gets shredded and gets ready, there's a huge rebound because, we have this isn't information for you, but this is just for the audience. But, we have a set point where a body is comfortable being at, and any extreme that you put on your body is going to take you out of that homeostasis that your body
exactly
wants to be sitting in. And so if you do like an extreme thing, your body's going to react extremely. But I always say, like, what goes up must come down. I mean, if you go, if it takes you 2 months to get in like the craziest shape of your life from being totally out of shape, your rebound on that is going to be crazy. But if you slowly trickle yourself into the type of shape that you need to be in, your body is actually changing its set point. You're able to change that set point if you do it slowly and steadily. And then the rebound either doesn't happen or it's so minimal that it's so easy to recover from. And that's why I believe that at 10 to 12 weeks, I think that's where you should be at a really good, solid place and so healthy and, great, really healthy body fat levels. And that's where I'm always at. And then I would say it's not until I'm at maybe 3 or 4 weeks out that I even really start to change. To be honest, I'm always kind of right there, 3 to 4 weeks out. And then at that point, then the diet gets stricter. The body fat starts coming down a little bit. I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone, and it only lasts a few weeks where I'm like that. So I am of the opinion that and that's kind of also a testament to how long I've been competing. I don't have a bunch of muscle that I'm trying to build. I've already built pretty much all the muscle that I want for my physique. Now it's like fine tuning it. Obviously earlier on, it was more of I was trying to build a little bit more earlier on. So maybe it was, 10 weeks out, I was, trying to build and get lean as I worked my way into the show. Now I'm kind of right where I want to be until I'm like 3 or 4 weeks out from a contest. But I do believe in that. I think that anytime you have to go to crazy extremes and you're using a contest to get in awesome shape, you're setting yourself up for a crazy rebound, and that's not good.
I love that. Yeah, that status quo or equilibrium, it's kind of like a balancing point on a seesaw. And making those, I don't want to use the word slow, but steady and consistent rather than these dramatic changes, which is going to result in a rebound. Again, like that pendulum, the Miley Cyrus video, the swinging ball, the wrecking ball. I always think of a wrecking ball when it comes to something like that because you can't force fat loss. Your body is going to respond. You might be able to get results short term, but then your body is always going to swing back to that equilibrium, and it's going to swing further back before it resets. So I always like to think of it as you've got to coax fat loss. You've got to kind of tease it along. And so you need to give yourself enough time. And I think this applies to anyone wanting to make some lifestyle changes in the gym and with their nutrition, regardless of whether they want to compete, just to get to a healthier point where they can maintain for years to come. And I found that out earlier in competing. I would diet hard. I would kind of be not where I was happy 12 weeks out. And I would do everything I could to get to a point where I looked great on competition day. And then those following weeks, I would rebound. My body would soak up excess carbohydrates, salt, water. I became more bloated and I didn't like how I looked. And so having not competed for so many years, I have no rebound and no sort of crash extreme diets and tons of cardio throughout the day. There would just be these kind of subtle changes where I'd be a little bit bigger, a little bit leaner and tighter, but I could make those changes just from tightening up my nutrition. Like you said, being a little bit more locked in the gym, a little bit more focused on that mind-muscle connection, adding cardio here and there, so that after 3, 4, 5 weeks, my body would change, but there'd be no rebound.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I think a lot of people now focus on these getting from A to B as quickly as they can without much thought about what happens from B through to Z.
Right.
So, yeah, what are your thoughts for, I like the word health span. You know, people use the word longevity, I think, all over the place, but health span to me means the ability to maintain this high quality of life for, I'd say, decades. You know, we've both been training for a number of years. And there are certain things that I think people like us do that others aren't doing, that they want to be doing. So what are those things, if that makes sense?
Right. Gosh, that's a good question. Where do I start?
Well, let me ask you this. 5 things that just come to top of the mind that somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, Wendy, I want to get in really good shape, but I don't want to compete. I just want to get into really good shape so I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm strong, I feel athletic, and I feel awake. And I want to do this for decades." What things should I be focused on?
Well, I'll start with nutrition. Okay. I think when it comes to nutrition, there's obviously so many different diets out there. Can you have a whole entire conversation about that? But honestly, I think that the main thing when it comes to diet is just focusing on protein with every meal. And I know that sounds so remedial, but I think when people are getting ready for a contest, obviously it's top of mind. Your meals are structured and everything. But I even find that a lot of competitors, when they're not getting ready for a contest, it's like they fall so far away from what a contest diet is that it's like grabbing like a bagel or carbs or whatever whenever they want to eat something, you know? And it's like if you make protein a priority and you're eating the protein first and making sure that that's it with everything that you eat, that I have found is such a solid rule of thumb that even if all else is totally out the window, that could keep someone on track to a point that at least keeps you from going so far off the deep end, right?
How much protein would you say? If someone's eating, just say, 3 or 4 regular meals, on average, what would the rule of thumb be for how much protein you would say they need to include in each and every meal?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's like the equation of eating, a gram of protein per pound of body weight or 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. I mean, honestly, most normal people, if you're consuming around like 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal, you're probably solid. And your body can only assimilate so much in one sitting anyway. So if you're like, oh my God, my weight is this, I got to have like 70 grams of protein in this one meal. It's like, most likely, no matter who you are, you're not going to be able to assimilate all of that protein in one sitting. If you're somebody that eats twice a day and you're like, I gotta squeeze in 100 grams of protein in this one meal. Well, I mean, most people, okay, if I'm going to put just a blanket statement on it, most people are probably good to go with about like 30 grams of protein in one meal, right? Most normal people.
Yep.
So that's a good rule of thumb. If I'm giving general advice out, right?
Yeah, I agree.
there's a interesting thing. People say don't eat after 6 p.m., right? Like, it's like the witching hour. Like after 6 p.m., like the body fat just goes crazy. I think that, it's funny because that when I hear people say that, the reason why it's always important to know why that rule of thumb even came to be. Most people, they're working all day and they're busy all day. And then when they get home, that's when they're sitting down and they have all the time in the world to F around, if that makes sense. Grab things. And if you tell someone to like stop eating after a certain time, they're probably going to stay out of trouble. It's not because the body stops burning calories and, stops working. I mean, your metabolism's still working while you're sleeping. So if you have a certain amount of food that you're, trying to eat throughout the day, it's totally fine if you have to continue to eat all the way through into 10 o'clock at night if you're trying to finish all of your food that you want to intake. But most people, if you're one of those people that goes and you snack and you F around after, 6 p.m. because you're home and you have all the time in the world, probably a good rule of thumb to just decide I'm going to cut it off at this time and you'll stay out of trouble, right? So that's a good rule of thumb, but it's important to know why. That's the thing. That's the catch. Not because you're not burning calories, but because you're going to stay out of trouble.
I like that term, F around. It used to be Netflix and chill. I think this new term, finish work and you just F around at night and eat everything that you want. I was laughing when you mentioned competitors often kind of go off the rails and start to eat everything. I have this image of my mind, whom I know we both have worked with in some capacity, myself with Powertec involved, but a certain somebody with a bucket of KFC eating. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Lee Priest.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you mentioned it, he wouldn't care.
I mean, he was known for, I think, kind of going off season, but then just coming back with this incredible symmetry and conditioning. Again, such I think, an aesthetic physique in his heyday of competing, and definitely someone who stood out.
We love you.
You have a story about Lee you want to share?
No, I said we love you, Lee. Like in case.
Okay, of course, yeah. No, people to this day, people still comment. Lee was involved with Powertec. I think he actually trained on a multi-system during a competition prep, and I think that is he in Australia now, or at least connected to somebody in Australia? But his videos are still coming to light today. Nutrition, great point. About 20-30 grams of protein per meal. Limit. Basically a cutoff time so that we're not eating throughout the night. I would say, 2.5 hours before going to bed. So as athletes, we're conditioning the muscle, we're priming the muscle to uptake glucose, kind of absorb the sugar from the blood. And those who partake in regular weight training, I think, have a much greater capacity to eat periodically throughout the day, instead of saying I need to cut off by 5-6 p.m. I mean, if we're weight training after work, you need the carbohydrates, you need the fuel to replenish the lost energy from the workout. So whilst there is this sort of general rule of thumb for how much and what to eat and when not to eat, I think a lot of that changes for those of us who strength train, in the fact that we need the nutrition throughout the day to allow our body to recover, repair, regrow, and come back again. Great points. What about training? You mentioned about your intensity points when you were kind of reaching your point of muscle failure. What are some of those sort of methods that you would incorporate to keep the stress high on the muscle, keep the intensity high, without necessarily reaching for those 50-pound dumbbells and trying to go to failure on those presses?
Yeah. Well, I will say, to piggyback on what you just said about the athletes versus like people that are trying to be healthy for lifestyle purposes, definitely two different ball games. I mean, when you're talking about an elite athlete trying to train for a specific event or competition, it's important to have a lot of strategy and rule out variables in the equation. So, if I'm trying to, prepare someone, or if I'm trying to prepare myself for something, I want the fewest amount of variables possible so that I can problem solve and be articulate with the end result, right? That's a different story with somebody who we're just trying to have, general principles that apply to most people so that you can have the most success, and you're not necessarily training for a very specific thing where we need to have like so few variables that we've got to problem solve and articulate, right? So,
Right.
so with that said, I will say that intensity principles are important for a number of reasons outside of, going as heavy as possible. When I was a track athlete and a gymnast, I was getting hurt all the time. Okay. I did not want that to be the case when I started doing a whole different sport. And I haven't really got injured in bodybuilding since I started competing in 2008. I mean,
Love that.
I hear so many people getting hurt because they're doing crazy heavy squats or all these crazy things. I'm like, why are you getting hurt? Like we're bodybuilding. We're like all show, no go. Hello. We just have to look like we could be badasses. We don't actually have to be crazy. But we're not power lifters. We're not trying to be these crazy strongman competitors, right? And if you look at body types, if the people that are lifting the heaviest amount of weight, they don't have the most aesthetic physique because that's not their goal.
Right.
You're not trying to, if your goal is to lift as heavy as possible and that's your, intensity principle that you're using progressive overload with, you're not necessarily going to get the best physique, goals if that's what you're trying to aim for. Now, if you are a power lifter, if you are trying to be strong, if you're training for an event or you're an athlete performance based, that is your goal, to be faster, more powerful, stronger. And the byproduct is whatever your body looks like from that goal is whatever your body looks like. But if you're like most people, when you get to a certain age, you really are trying to make have a little bit more of those vanity reasons for why you're training and what you want to look like, right? And so most people, I would say, are probably trying to create something with their body. Most people are wanting to go with more of a bodybuilding type program because they want to look a certain way. And with that, I will say the intensity principles that I really go by are, progressively overloading with, volume, with supersetting, with just mind to muscle connection, something that's totally qualitative. You can't even really measure how much somebody's focused on the muscle, but you can feel it, right? And that is one thing that is really hard to measure, but connecting more to the muscle when you're training it is a hard to measure intensity principle that I really go by. But anything that you could do to stimulate the muscle outside of just primarily adding more weight on top of your load, that is what I really go off of. And again, that will really reduce the chance of getting injured and increase the opportunity for a muscle stimulation and growth without having the risk factor. So
love that. Absolutely. Wendy, I could talk to you for days about bodybuilding and food and fitness and just talking about the passion that I think we both have for what we do. I want to end this podcast with 3 quick questions, one answer questions or a sentence. Nothing too crazy. First one is favorite exercise to do.
Oh my God. Favorite exercise? I don't know. What is my favorite exercise? I don't know. That's a joke. I don't know. Rob, you stumped me.
You got nothing for me? With what exercise you have to do?
You stumped me. What exercise do I love? I don't know. What do I love? Hang on, wait, let me think about this. Can I think about this?
Okay, what muscle group? You go into the gym, you've been off the gym for a week, you head into the gym. Okay. What's going to be like the first
I love cable
exercise
rows.
that comes to mind?
Okay,
cable rows. Okay.
Cable rows, because I love squeezing my back.
Okay, there we go.
I thought about it and then I realized that is my favorite, I think.
Okay, I like that one, cable rows. Yeah, next exercise. Post-competition meal. What's your go-to cheat meal when you've come off the stage?
I knew you were going to ask me that. You already know the answer to this, but I still haven't had it, by the way. I want spaghetti and meatballs. That's what I'm craving.
That's not okay. Most people are like, pizza, burger. You're like, I know. Okay, spaghetti and meatballs. Yeah, I guess it's not part of the competition diet. So obviously it's been omitted from the diet. Okay, I can appreciate that.
Because in your mind, you're thinking, I can make spaghetti and meatballs healthy. What is she doing? I want spaghetti and meatballs, like with all the sauce and the.
Okay,
on the grease and like the everything.
All right, I'll give you that one. Okay, we'll include that.
Like healthy turkey meatballs and like, you're thinking about.
I was thinking that, yeah. I can make that pretty healthy.
Pasta. No, you're like zucchini pasta noodles. No, I want the full-fledged spaghetti meatballs.
No, that's one thing I don't do with my nutrition. It's if I want something, I have the original what it is. If I want bread, I'll go and have some bread instead of trying to find a flour-free alternative just because, again, when we do what we do, it's not going to make much of a difference, providing it's not a bigger part of the equation. So, if I want some dark chocolate, I'll go and have dark chocolate. If I want a burger, I'll go have a burger.
Can I go off on a quick tangent really fast? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please. Yeah.
There are a lot of companies that are trying to do like protein donuts. I'm not going to mention any names.
Okay.
Okay. Just because something is shaped like a donut does not make it a donut. If I want a donut, I'm going to have a donut. Okay. That's all I had to say.
Absolutely. That would be a whole nother topic for another podcast. I've got lots to talk about that. I'm glad you mentioned that. But the final question for you is, this would be more of a sentence or a paragraph. What would be the single most important piece of advice you would tell someone wanting to make changes to their physique? And let me define that by saying, just they want to look better when they look in the mirror. What would be sort of the most important thing, if there's one thing that sums it up, that they should do in the gym?
I would say, well, you're assuming that they're going to the gym. I would say...
I am assuming they're all working out.
Because if they want... Well, first of all, I would say if you want to change anything, you have to create a behavior pattern. And that's people's main issue when it comes to not seeing results. It's like you do something one time or you're inconsistent and you haven't formed a behavior pattern. It takes time to create behavior patterns. So understanding that it may not feel natural and normal and it may be in the way, but once you make it a non-negotiable component to your life, that's when the results are going to start to happen. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just start with anything consistently, and eventually you can add variables to the equation and continue to see. And like you said before, you're motivated when you start to see results and you start to see that those changes happen. And that's where you're going to find yourself, is once you get the behavior pattern, situated and you're one foot in front of the other and you're consistent and it's non-negotiable, you're going to want to throw in variables to continue on because you're going to be motivated by the changes that you see. So
I love that. What a great answer. Wendy, I love chatting with you. We'll have to do this again in person. I think the last video that we filmed with Powertec, it's over 500,000 on
really?
On so yeah, people.
Well, hello.
People know you. People know you. We'll get some more. Maybe we'll jump in together, do a video, and I guess we can talk and share some tips and experiences, and continue to pay it forward. And that's one thing I really love about you. You have these platforms that you put everything out there. You share so much wealth of information. You inspire generations, multi-generations, and all of your information and content that you put out comes from, I think, just a really good place. You want people to take heed of what you say and to make these changes so that they can be a better, stronger, healthier version of themselves. So thank you. I can't wait until we connect again and get some more great content here on Powertec.
Well, it takes one to know one.
All right. I'll chat with you soon. Thanks again, Wendy. Bye-bye.